Hey, welcome back to the arm balance series. Today we're looking at all things crow. So crow for me is a bit of an umbrella term that we use for lots of very similar poses that are slightly different. So today we're going to look at what I would consider Kakasana, which is really kind of your foundational entry-level crow. This is a great one for anyone that's not been able to crow yet and just needs some hints and tips to get there. Then we will look at traditional crow or Bakasana, and that's really where you've got the flat part of the knee. So the bits, when the knee is fully bent, there's kind of the bits of the knee that are close to the inside of the body, so these bits here, and they are actually quite flat. They kind of create a little flat shelf. And then similarly at the bottom of the tricep, just above the elbow joint, as the arm is bent, that also creates a little bit of a shelf. And so for me, when you've got your knee quite low down at the bottom of the tricep, that's your kind of regular Bakasana. And then we have Bakasana in the sense of crane. Now Bakasana in Sanskrit does translate to crane, but crane is really where you've got the knees higher up the arm, as close to the armpit as they can go really, and the arms are as straight as they can go. So we will cover these three in today's video. Next is warming up. So if you haven't warmed the wrists and the hands up yet, go back and do the first video. It's super important to prepare the wrist, hands and fingers. As I said in the first video, the fingers become your brakes and the wrists are your stability for the whole structure. So it's really important that they are ready. There's a video here that you can click on and you can go back and do that and then meet me back here. And then finally, something that I do want to touch on is face planting. So what I would say I see as when I was just practicing yoga for many years, or now as a teacher, is the fear of face planting. So that's losing your balance and hitting the deck and going on your face. And I think it's just really important to kind of be real and say, we all face plant. Yoga teachers face plant, yoga practitioners that have been doing yoga for years, we all do it. Sometimes you just lose your balance, sometimes you're tired, sometimes you've gone into it wrong, sometimes you're pushing yourself. Recently I was really struggling with Ekapada Bakasana, which is one-legged crow. I must have face planted hundreds of times. So I have face planted thousands of times on my yoga journey, and my face planting career is nowhere near over. I'm sure I will continue to face plant regularly. So the first thing is, you're not on your own. If you do face plant, we all face plant. Friends of mine that are teachers can confirm that as well. Secondly, it really doesn't hurt that much to face plant unless you're on kind of concrete or a tiled floor, like a kitchen floor. It's not really going to hurt you. Most of the mats now are fairly thick, and I think the only thing that's really going to hurt is maybe pride. So don't worry about hurting yourself. And I think maybe try and use, if you have got that fear, that's fine. We've all got fears when it comes to various asanas, but just try and use this as an opportunity to really tackle that fear head on and deal with it. Because once you get past that, you'll go into the posture with more confidence, but then you'll also be able to progress to other arm balances. And you know, that's what we're all about, is just improving our yoga practice every day by just trying our best. So if you're not giving it 100% because you're worried about hitting your beautiful face, then please don't. That being said, if you really think, no, you know, this is my first time crowing, or I'm very new to yoga and I don't care what she says, I'm still scared, that's cool. Just pop a pillow, maybe two pillows, a cushion, a blanket, anything's going to give you some softness in case you fall. And the only thing I would caveat that with is, once you manage to get and hold a crow, you know, 3-4 times consistently, just take it away. You won't need it anymore. And you don't want it to become a mental crutch that, oh, I can't do it unless I've got the blanket. Okay, cool. So we'll head right into Kakasana. So if you have a block, maybe grab it if you're struggling to lift the feet off the floor, but if you don't worry, it's not essential. I'm going to show the pose both ways. So place the block in the middle of the mat and come up onto the block. So we're going to bring the balls of the feet and the toes onto the block, and then just kind of find some stability here. So the first pose that we'll look at is really great if you're new to crow, and that is what I think of this posture as actually Kakasana, not Bakasana, and we'll just explain why. So first of all, in this pose, we're going to take the knees wide. So we're just going to open the knees out slightly, and we're going to have a little gap between the feet. Next is the hand position. So we want the hands to be shoulder distance. And we want the hands so that when we bend the elbows and lean forward, we are, kind of roughly bringing the shoulders to stack over the hands, because that's going to give us a little bit of stability in the foundation. Really spread the fingers. So as I've said, the fingers become your levers and your brakes. So you really want to spread them and grip into the mat with them. The next thing, which I think is really, really important, especially for avoiding the face plant, and that is the Drishti, or where you put your gaze. So the Drishti in yoga is always important, but I think is critical when you're arm balancing. So the gaze here, if you imagine that both hands are flat to the mat and they create this kind of line, imagine then that you're creating a triangle and the hands are at the bottom of the triangle or the pyramid. You want your gaze to be right at the top. So a key point here is that you're going to go, generally speaking, where your gaze is. So if you're looking straight down, for a start, you've got the shoulders hunched, but secondly, the gaze is down, chances are you're going to face plant, and that will not be about strength or balance, it'll just be about you're out of kilter. So the gaze needs to be going forward, so towards the top of the mat, and where the gaze is going, you're going to go. So we want to be going up and along. We don't want to be going kind of up and then straight back down. For this version, you're going to really squeeze those legs into the outside of the arms. You're also then going to really push the arms out. So it's almost like you're trying to open the knees wider, and then the legs are saying, I want to be coming in closer. And then you're creating this lovely kind of barrier here. So you've got arms pushing out, and then the knees or the legs resisting the push. And that's just going to give you some sturdiness. Next thing to think about is you've got to breathe. So you see people and they come into crow and they're like, and they might hold it for a second and then they kind of go in blue in the face, and it's like, no, we need to breathe. We've got to always breathe through the asanas. So try and keep a nice steady breath throughout the posture, even if you kind of get a bit height and then you go, try to breathe through it. The next thing is the center of the body, or the core, the abdominals. So we don't want to just check out here. We really want to engage this part of the body. We really want to create some engagement, because that's going to help us lift up. If we're kind of just flopping or saggy and not engaging anything but the legs, then that's going to be really difficult for the hands to lift the structure. And what you'll find is if you're checked out in this area, you'll find it hard to hold the posture. So once you've actually got the balance, a lot of it is just in creating this strength through the center. So really engaging the abdominals, sucking in the belly, not letting it just kind of do what it wants. So we'll start off slow. So you don't have to be on the block for this, but I will show it with the block for this first one. So we've got our hands shoulder width, we've bent our elbows, the gaze is forward. engage the belly, so engage the abdominals. And now lift the hips. So as we lift the hips, we'll go forward and come back. And you're like, ooh, how am I gonna go? That's fine. Lift the hips, come forward. Bend the elbows as you do that. Keep the gaze ahead of you. Don't look down. Let's go again. Lift the hips, squeeze everything in, come forward, and then come back down. Now let's try half Kakasana. So half Kakasana, as I tell my students, is 1 foot off. So once you've got 1 foot off, you're actually half crowing. So let's go. So lift the hips, lean forward, take the gaze forward, squeeze the belly in, lift 1 foot off, put it down, come back. Good job, halfway there. Let's go again. This is where the block helps because you've got less of a lift of the foot. It's giving you that little bit of height, but it's not essential at all. So we go again, we lean forward, we squeeze everything in, and we lift the other foot. And you can just keep repeating those drills. Maybe you don't stop, so you come forward, you lift 1 foot, put it down. Lift the other foot, put it down. And keep doing this. And you just really, in that motion, you're just feeling out, okay, this is what it feels like to have most of my weight coming down onto my hands. And that's cool. It's cool to like feel it out, get the body used to it, more importantly, get the mind used to it, because the mind's the thing that usually is the blocker. Okay, so then once you've done that a few times, you've managed to lift each foot off. Let's go for it. So the gaze, I've spread the fingers, the gaze is ahead of me. I'm squeezing the legs into the arms. I'm bending the elbows, pushing the arms out from each other. I lift the hips up, come forward. Lift 1 foot up, lift the other foot up. Now when I'm here, I'm going to keep breathing. I'm going to use the fingertips for balance. I'm going to squeeze my abdominals in. I'm not letting it all check out. And then when I'm ready, I come back onto the block. So let's try that without the block because it's really not essential to have the block. All the block is doing is just getting the hips lifted initially, and there's less for the feet to travel. So we just do exactly the same without the blocks. Come up onto the tiptoes, really feel that kind of two-way force between the arms and the knees. Lift the hips up, take the gaze forward, 1 foot comes off and the other comes off. And you're crowing or you're Kakasana. You keep holding it. Keep squeezing the fingers, gripping the mat. And when you're ready, you come down. Okay, good job, yogi. So hopefully you caught some air there, caught some lift off. So yeah, things to remember. You've got to make sure that the hands are roughly shoulder width. You want the hands to be roughly under the shoulders when you go forward. Really lift the hips up. One of the things that you see is people lean forward like this and they bend the elbows to get forward, and that's fine. But then from here, I can't really get my feet off the floor because I've got the whole weight of my butt bearing down. So you've got to lift the hips to then kind of have the ability to go forward, and it's the up and forward that lets the feet lift. So Kakasana. Let's try that one once more. So take the hands down, spread the fingers. Squeeze everything in, engage the belly. Take the gaze nice and forward. Lift the hips up, 1 foot comes off and the other. And then just hold it here, breathing and smiling and enjoying your crow journey. Squeezing the abdominals, squeezing the belly, and then when you're ready, you come back down. So hopefully you got somewhere with that. Now let's go on to a more traditional crow. So this crow is good because crow is very much a transitional posture. So if you are doing a crow within the midst of your vinyasa or ashtanga class, you'll really be using crow as a jumping off point to go somewhere else. So you could, from crow, jump back into chaturanga, let's say, or from crow go into a headstand, eventually from crow up into a handstand. So crow is really a bit of a jumping off point. It's a nice linker of postures. And so the elbow, the knee needs to be, fairly low towards the elbow so that it's got somewhere to go. If the knee is sucked in under the armpit, it's doable, but it's going to be much harder. So for this one, I would consider this a very traditional crow. So let's try it. From here, take the feet closer together. We've still got the butt onto the heels for now. In this crow, you want the knees to track under the shoulders. So whereas last time we took the knees wider, this time we're going to keep the knees a bit more in. Next, we'll place the hands down. And again, they're going to be at shoulder distance. So there's really not a huge amount changing here, other than on the previous posture, the legs went to the outside of the arms. This time, the knee will just slightly overlap, which you'll see. So spreading the fingers, leaning the body forward, coming up onto the tiptoes and lifting the hips. Then we're going to bend the elbows, and we're just going to find that place where the flat part of the knee can rest on the bottom of the tricep, the top of the elbow. So like I said earlier, this part of the knee, when it's fully bent, is kind of flat, and then you've got this flat part of the elbow. So you want that connection. So the knee will overhang very slightly. So let's do that one again. And sometimes you'll have to come in and out of it just to figure out, like, where should my knee be? You want it quite low, not on the elbow joint, but you want it just at the bottom of the tricep. So when you bend the arm, you'll feel where it kind of then starts to get flat. So take the hands down, the gaze, the engagement, the breathing, it's all super important. Then inhale, bend the elbows, create the shelf, and pop the knees onto the shelf. Squeeze the toes into the butt, the heels into the butt. Keep breathing, using your fingertips, and then you'll come down. So crow, regular crow. So once you've got that solid foundation, the next kind of crow in the umbrella of crow is full Bakasana, which is crane pose. And crane pose is different because the arms are straight or working towards being straight. And so it's harder. It's harder because the shoulders are going over the wrists, but they're also going with straight arms. So you haven't got, the kind of support of the back of the elbow. It's just generally a much more difficult posture. So work on regular crow, and then when you're ready, we'll have a go at crane or Bakasana. So for crane, I like to try and come into it with my elbows as straight as I can, rather than coming into it with bent elbows and then straightening them. Whatever works for you is cool, but I just find it's harder with that posture to try and go from the bent arm to straight. So I'm taking my hands down in front of me, and again, they're shoulder width. I'm really not changing much about the setup here. I do bring the hands a little more in, and that's because I'm not going to bend the elbows and go forward. I'm just going to go forward. So I like to bring the hands closer than I would for the other crow variations. Coming up onto the tiptoes, lifting the butt high, keeping the arms nice and straight here, maybe walking them back slightly, and then leaning forward, taking one foot off, taking the other foot off, and holding it, trying to keep the arms nice and straight, and then coming out of it. Give the wrists a bit of a shake. That's a big one on the wrists because you're taking the shoulders forward with the arms straight. So Kakasana, crow, regular Bakasana, and then crane Bakasana. So hopefully you found something in those little breakdowns that was useful. The key thing is to remember, warm up the wrists, really engage through the center, and take the gaze forward. So thank you so much for following along. If you enjoyed it, like the video and leave me some comments. I'd love to hear what you thought was useful, where you are with it, and what else you'd like to see. And if you want to see more, then obviously you can subscribe to the channel. So thanks, Yogi. I will see you back here for the next in the arm balance series.